Hey everyone, happy Tuesday. Hi there, I am Brandy. So, fun fact, this is the third time I've done one of these, and I realized last month that I had been forgetting to even introduce myself. I think I just assumed that anyone watching this knows me. And okay, that's probably a good assumption to make, but it's also probably a good idea to introduce myself. We're showing up as imperfect here, and I'm just trying to lead the charge with that. So, hi. Welcome to Tuesday Talks. This is where I chat about and explore different ideas or different ways to find clarity and balance and resilience when life feels overwhelming. So that's why we're here together today. And today we're talking about the F word. We're talking about failure and how we can shift our mindset around it and build resilience by understanding its impact on our brain and our leadership and our personal growth. So let's talk about it. It's not a dirty word. Failure is not a dirty word. It's actually just part of the process of life. Whether you are running a business or raising a family or leading a team, it is so natural to feel like you are falling short. But failure does not define you. How you respond does. So, I love being here with all of you, and I'm going to keep chat open so that I can try to keep an eye on it. I'm going to continue with last month's experiment where I don't do an overlay of the chat. But after this, if you feel like you would want to see that in real time, you just let me know and I will show it next month. So let's get real. When was the last time you felt like you were failing? I mean, not that cute kind of failure that teaches you a quick lesson and wraps up in 30 minutes or less, like a sitcom. My favorite being How I Met Your Mother, but the kind of failure that lingers and makes you start to question stuff. So let's see. What's our first question? First prompt for the day. What is one word that comes up when I ask you to think about failure? What's one word that comes up for you when you think about failure? So drop that in the chat. And while you're doing that, I'm going to share a little bit of my own experience with failure. Most recently, it's happening now, if I'm being totally honest. My journey of launching my book, Shine Through the Storm, of launching my own business almost 3 years ago in motivational speaking, and how it has thrown me for a loop at times. I definitely have felt that failure feeling kick in when it just feels like things aren't sticking. I'm not getting the job, or I'm struggling to keep up with all of the many parts of running a business, or to be honest, it feels like failure sometimes to not sell books. I know that's not why we write books. We write books because we need to share our stories, but when you don't sell them and they just sit on the shelf, it can feel like a pretty massive failure. And then most recently, I took some part-time work to help sort of, bring in some income because this little business of mine is struggling a little bit, and it at times feels like a setback, and at the same time it can feel like a win at times. It's removed a lot of pressure, and so I definitely know where you're coming from if you feel like you're failing. I also dug into my memory bank and I started to reflect on the time in my career where I was leading as a director of property management, and I was supporting my team and my company, and I constantly felt behind. There were so many days that I left feeling like I failed. Um, I might start that morning feeling like a champion, like I was on top of the world because I was um, changing something with someone's trajectory, or coaching in the right ways, or having a minor win. And then by the end of the day, maybe someone quit, or I had some sort of HR landmine. Um, or maybe none of that happened, but by the end of the day, with all of meetings and coaching and guidance and mentoring, I was walking home with a mountain of paperwork or my own work that had to get done. And so I just felt behind most of the time, which left me feeling like I was failing. But what I've learned with quite a bit of time is that is leadership. Supporting others, growing them, even if that means that I'm falling behind on my work, that means I'm doing something right. And I'm curious if you've ever felt like the more you support others, the more you fall behind on your own goals. If you do, that's leadership. Quite honestly, that's what I've learned. That is the growth aspect of leadership. And that's not what they tell us or what is talked about when we start out in our careers. When we're all gung-ho and we're, pushing to get those promotions and move forward, what they don't tell us is that it usually ends up meaning that you feel like you're failing most of the time. And that in itself is a success. And it takes time to learn how to deal with that. Because the hard truth is that most leaders do feel like they're failing more often than not. Doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. It means that you're actually doing it right. So these moments that, for me anyway, felt like a failure, they were also shaping my resilience. And that brings us to this research that I've been doing, and that's the psychology and the science behind why this feeling happens, why we feel like we're failing in these moments. So let's dive into that a little bit. Again, I think I've said this before. I'll probably say it again. Not a scientist. But here's some details that I've found that I felt useful, and I hope you do too. All right, so first is there's a term called neuroplasticity. That is really fun to say. Basically, it means that our brains are changeable. So when we fail and we try again, in other words, we pick ourselves up by the bootstraps and we keep going, we literally rewire ourselves to be more resilient. Our brains are actually wired to adapt. So every time we experience failure and we keep going, we create stronger neural pathways associated with problem solving and adaptability and even emotional regulation. And so that kind of takes us into this thing called the learning loop, which is where the brain remembers the mistakes that we make more than it remembers our successes. It's actually part of how we learn as humans. When we reflect, we actually end up encoding deeper lessons into our long-term memory. And this activates the growth mindset. I know we've all heard of that before. So basically, failure is what triggers the part of the brain involved in risk assessment and strategy. And with time and conscious effort, those responses shift from fear to flexibility. That's why it takes time and repetition and all of these things to create really great leaders and to build up that resilience you need if you are new to become a fabulous leader, to be able to absorb all of the things it takes to lead others, feel like you're failing, and then keep going. Basically, the brain doesn't just remember mistakes, it actually learns from them. And that's why we often remember what didn't work more vividly than what did work. So now that we know the what behind here, like all of this that's happening, why are we still internalizing failure? Well, I think there's two main reasons. One is quite often we tie our worth to our output. I know I'm guilty of that. Especially in leadership or entrepreneurial roles like mine. The leadership roles especially, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to just put everything out there all the time. And then we tie our worth to that and how much we're able to get done. And then secondly is that society, just generally speaking, glamorizes success, but they rarely share the messy middle. So when we're on Instagram or TikTok or whatever your passion place is to go and try to de-stress, yeah, you see people's successes. I see it all the time, especially when I started this business. I started getting a lot of feed about building your business. And at first it captured me. I was like, okay, what can I do different? What can I learn from this person? What should I be doing differently? Until I realized that it was all a bunch of crap. Like, quite honestly, there was very little truth to what I was seeing. It really was about glamorizing the end result, and there wasn't anything about the messy middle. So we need to shift this mindset, I think, anyway, so that we can start to feel a little bit better and move forward and learn from our mistakes better. How do we reframe failure as data and not identity, basically? Because failure is not final. If we can change that to say failure is not final, it's feedback, we can take a step further, don't you think? And now that we understand what's happening to our brains and how our brains work, that we do actually learn more from failure than from success, that it creates new neural pathways and builds problem solving skills. Can't we let go of the idea that failure is a bad thing and really stick to the idea that failure is feedback? And can we double down on that with our teams? Honestly, the difference between successful teams and successful people are those who fall down or who stay stuck versus those who are willing to try again, who are willing to pick themselves up by the bootstraps and give it another shot. Or as my grandma used to say, get back on that horse. So there was a quote. I looked it up. I tried to find who coined this, and it looks like it's most often attributed to a woman named Mary Pickford, who was an early film star. Though there have been some other sort of similar comments echoed by others. And the quote, it goes like this. It says, failure isn't falling down, it's staying down. And I love that quote. And I really would love for that to stick with me, and I hope that it sticks with you too. So before we go forward, I want you to think about a time when failure taught you something crucial. And just take a minute with that and really let it sink in. Hopefully that moment shaped your growth in some way. And now let's go ahead and let's start. We understand the why, we understand what's going on. Now let's talk about how we actually create some change. So let's talk about some actionable framework, not that fluffy stuff. This is the stuff that actually builds muscle memory to help us move forward. So there are the 3 R's of rising strong. There's reflect, reframe, and re-engage. So first we want to reflect, which is, take a breath. Name what happened that you think you failed with, and without any sort of judgment. So before you just plow forward and keep moving, take a beat and feel what it feels like to have had that experience. Name what didn't work. When you do that, when you name stuff, you remove the shame behind it by bringing it into the light. So that's number 1, reflect. Number 2 is reframe. So ask, what did I learn? What would I do differently next time? And what part of this was in my control? Basically, try to find that micro win, even if the failure is truly that, which again, failure is feedback. There is a spark, right? There's one thing in there that you learned or that you can improve on or maybe even understand better. So that's number 2, reframe. And number 3 is re-engage. All right, now we know what we learned. So let's decide what small, courageous step you'll take next. Remember, you don't have to leap. This doesn't have to be a long jump. Just take one small, brave step forward. Number 3, re-engage. So the 3 R's of rising strong: reflect, reframe, and re-engage. Okay, so which are you sitting in right now? Is it reflect, reframe, or reengage? Take a minute. If you want to share that in the chat, fabulous. If not, keep it for yourself. That's okay. We're going to keep moving on. We are going to talk about some action steps that you can take over the next month to keep building that muscle memory that we talked about. So essentially what you're going to start with is okay, I don't want to scare you because resume, people think, oh God, I have to write a resume, and they totally shut down. I am no different. There's something about writing out your resume that just seems daunting, but we're going to write a failure resume. It's not that difficult. All I want you to do is write down 3 to 5 failures that you've experienced. 3 to 5 failures, and then what each one taught you. Basically, what we're trying to do here is name them so that it flips your mindset from shame to strength. So, did you not get a job? Or maybe you got passed up on the promotion. You didn't get that promotion you thought you were going to get. Did you start a project and not finish it and it's just been sitting there? I know growing up, there were always construction projects all around the house that were like half done. So, we get stuck in that and then it feels overwhelming to start again. Maybe you feel like you're behind at work, like what I was talking about earlier when I was trying to keep up as a leader. Or maybe your book's not selling. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Whatever it is, write it down and then write down what you feel it has taught you. Okay. Then step 2 for this month, all right, is I want you to choose one of those situations that you are maybe still carrying as a failure. It's still weighing on your shoulders. All right. So what I want you to do is think about that, identify it, and then write a new ending to that. Not a fake happy one, but one that actually reflects what you gained or maybe who you've become since that's happened. And rewriting a story doesn't mean pretending that it didn't hurt. It means telling the whole truth, including what has come after. I know when I wrote my book, I didn't fake an ending for each of the chapters, for each story that I wrote. I actually dug deep and shared the real experience, the whole truth, the mistakes, the ugly mishaps. And then I also shared what I learned from each of those and how it shaped me as a human. And it helped me grow. The whole process of writing that book itself helped me grow. And I'm hoping it helps other people too. But the fact is that writing that story has been incredibly transformative. And I'm hoping that this will do the same for you, maybe just on a smaller scale. It's not a book, it's picking one situation and then writing that new ending. Writing the new ending from the perspective of truth and wholeness and what you've gained or who you've become since it's happened. Easy, right? 2 steps. Then third, all right, the third thing before we see each other again in a month is I want you to choose one courageous act. Where are you playing small because you're afraid of failing again? Pick one bold action this month. Send the pitch. Apply for the role. Put your foot in the door for that promotion. Start the blog. Or maybe even just speak up in the meeting. By the way, you earned that spot in that meeting or you wouldn't be there. So, can you do it? I think you can. So, what is that one action you're going to take from today's talk? You can drop it in the chat or you can just take it with you and use it for the rest of your month. All right, y'all. So, failing is not a flaw. Can we say it together? Failing is not a flaw. It's just a feature of being human. You're not broken because you're behind. You're growing. You're growing. And you're most likely showing up as a leader for someone or a group of other people. That, my friends, in itself is a win. You're building strength. Maybe you don't even realize that you have yet. Just remember, rising strong is a choice, okay? And every time you choose to keep going, to pause, to learn and grow from each experience that you have, you're not failing, you're becoming. So if this talk hit home and you feel motivated to keep going and to keep that momentum going, to keep learning and pushing yourself, I hope that you will check out my book. I'm going to put up a QR code to share it because, if I didn't, shame on me. And I hope that you will enjoy it. It is on Amazon and a place called Ingram Spark. And you can also just find it on my website. So please check it out and mark the calendar for next month. In a month, we're going to have a Tuesday talk again, and we'll find something new to explore and to chat about. And I hope until then, you have a fabulous time digging up all your failures and figuring out what you learned from them and knowing that you are not a failure, you are growing. All right.